Each fall, calves face the greatest health challenge of their lives as they move off farms and ranches and are commingled in feedlots. Joining us to talk about some of these challenges is Dr. Kevin Hill, a technical services veterinarian with Merck Animal Health. Dr. Hill, thanks for coming to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, fall runs in full swing right now. Tell us about some of the challenges that creates for calves.
Well, if you think about it from the calf's perspective, this is a big disruption in his life. We start generally in gathering these cattle from wide open spaces and collecting them, separating the calves from the cows, vaccinating, processing, load them on trucks, send them maybe a day's trip away, unload them with a lot of new friends, and turn them out to feed they probably haven't seen before and don't know where the water is, all sorts of things. So this is a big time challenge for them in lots of ways.
Well, specifically, what kind of health problems does this new scenery and new conditions create for those calves?
Undoubtedly, the biggest problem the whole beef industry faces in terms of health is respiratory disease. And so that's exactly what happens to these calves. They are presented with new bacteria and virus exposures that they haven't seen before, and so doubled with that stress factor, then respiratory disease is a big issue.
We talk a lot about the costliness of BRD. What are some things that producers should consider in managing it effectively?
I like to think of it as two primary factors that they need to manage. One would be stress, and the other is trying to supercharge the calf's immune system, if you will. And so in terms of managing stress, we talked about all those things that happen sometimes in a very short period of time. So if we can spread those out so that gathering and weaning and processing don't all happen on the same day, they don't get shipped until after weaning, ideally, that can help manage stress a lot. And then in terms of trying to improve the status of their immune system, then we're talking about vaccinations and things like that to help prepare them better.
Well, I want to follow up about this concept of immunity because it's so important. What are some things producers can do to really turbocharge or enhance that immune response?
Generally, the things that we recommend would be to try to get 2 rounds of vaccination into the calves before they're going to ship into the feedlot. And so if they can do that, and additionally, again, if they can wean those calves for 30 to 45 days, those are the things that help that immune system the most.
You know, I know as a cow-calf producer, we always believe it's so important to get colostrum in the calves right up front, right? And so assuming we've done that, then what else can we think about throughout that calf's lifestyle to begin building immunity even earlier?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned colostrum because it's the effects of not getting enough colostrum at birth extend clear in not just in the suckling phase but into the feedlot phase. We know that calves that didn't get enough colostrum at birth have a much higher risk of disease and death in the feedlot. So that's number one. And then as the protection from those maternal antibodies starts to drop off over 3 to 4 months of age, then that calf needs to start developing its own active immunity. And that's where the vaccination programs come in to help stimulate that immune system.
So specifically, what other advice might you have for folks as they approach fall weaning time? You said, first of all, try to break some of those management practices up so all the stress doesn't occur at one time. What other advice might you give cow-calf producers?
Well, there's kind of 3 basic things that producers can do. They need, number one, to develop a good vaccination schedule. They need to eliminate parasites from the calves. And in terms of vaccinations, 2 categories there really. One is respiratory disease. The other we haven't talked about is clostridial disease protection, just kind of a standard thing that should be included.
And, you know, for some folks, this may seem really, really complex. Lots of products, lots of protocols, lots of timing elements and so forth. Where can producers go to get some additional help in thinking through this?
Well, this is where having a team effect with your veterinarian is really important. I mean, he's the one that has the most relevant information as far as what diseases are prevalent in your area, as well as the area where these calves are going to ship to, when those vaccines ought to be given, which vaccines he prefers. All those kind of things are things that the veterinarian is really helpful for. So I think that interaction is really essential for a good health program.
Dr. Hill, maybe you can explain a few of the things that Merck Animal Health has done to assist producers in this planning process as well.
Yeah, we've recently introduced a value-added program called Prime Vac, and that's just a collection of these ideas and suggestions to help producers organize what vaccines they give, when they give them, so that the result then is in that most well-prepared and healthy calf.
So outline for our viewers, if you would, the primary categories that Prime Vac encompasses.
Okay, and that would be, again, the respiratory protection. Certainly, again, as BRD is our #1 issue, it all sort of centers around respiratory protection. #2 would be clostridial protection, like blackleg, malignant edema, kind of sudden death issues typically. And the third is control of internal parasites.
Now, I know Merck has products in each of these three areas. Do you want to highlight a few of those?
Right, for respiratory protection, our Vista vaccines, Vista 5, for instance, has the 5 common viruses that are involved in respiratory disease. And then in Vista Once is a complete vaccine that adds the bacterial components of Mannheimia and Pasteurella to that vaccine. So we get a very nice complete respiratory protection out of the Vista vaccines.
So the second category you mentioned, I think, was clostridial. What are some specific Merck products that help protect against clostridial issues?
Again, we have a kind of a family of vaccines called Vision, and various combinations with 7 antigens or 8, or even some that have 9 with tetanus protection. So, and they can be combined with pink eye protection or with somnus protection. So we have a large group of clostridial vaccines there to work with.
And then the third category you mentioned was the parasite control. Talk to us a little bit about Merck's products, and specifically what might be different about some of Merck's internal and external parasite control products.
Yeah, Safeguard is the name of our parasite control product, and its chemical name is fenbendazole. The fenbendazole category is distinctly different from most other wormers on the market. Most of the others fall into the ivermectin class. So the importance of that these days is that there's increasing evidence that ivermectins are losing their effectiveness, and so fenbendazole, especially in combination with the ivermectins, gives outstanding control. And so getting that word out to producers and veterinarians now is really important, as they understand that these worms are changing, and so our approach to control has to change as well.
Very good. And I have to ask you the obvious question, Dr. Hill. I mean, all these things we've been talking about cost money to producers. And so fundamentally, is there a premium involved? Is there a return on investment for producers who go through these precautions and make these investments in trying to improve the health of their calves?
Yeah, we've got really good data to answer that question now, whereas before sometimes you sit in an auction and you can't see that those vaccinated calves brought any more than the neighbors unvaccinated, but especially through superior auction data, we're able to analyze that. And we know that calves that at least get those 2 rounds of vaccinations that I talked about, they'll bring approximately $25 per head more than an unvaccinated calf. And if you take that same calf and add 45 days of weaning to it, that doubles to somewhere near $50 a head is the premium. So there's a good return there for the effort that goes into it.
So it sounds like Merck's Prime Vac program really does create value for producers.
It really has that opportunity to do that by veterinarians and producers working together. The other thing that Prime Vac program is going to do is the veterinarian will be able to produce a certificate of health that will list the details of all vaccinations that have been given, and then it'll have his signature on it. So it's a nice third-party verification of the health practices that have been completed. And so in the end, what we really think it's a win for the producer, it's a win for the buyer who knows he's getting his money's worth, and so all around everybody comes out ahead.
Well, no doubt as these cattle become more and more valuable, it's really incumbent on us to do everything we can to keep these cattle healthy.
We've got a very expensive product out there these days to protect. That's right.
Indeed. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you.
To find out more about the value of preconditioning your calves and protecting their health, visit our website at cattlemantocattleman.org.